Welcome to episode 230 of the podcast. Today I'm sitting down with Dr. Tom. We cover a very wide range of topics on this episode. Dr. Tom is a classic guitarist, he's a medical doctor, he is a research scientist, and he's recently started a nail strengthening product business. We also talk about one of Dr. Tom's main passions and goals in life, which is to solve the Didimo problem in New Zealand. We also talk about life, death, traveling, everything in between. And just when you think it couldn't get any more interesting, we finish with a song at the end. So make sure you stick around for that. And this is one of, if not the most interesting episodes recorded to date. So you're not going to want to miss this one. Thank you to Rosefern Homes for sponsoring this episode. And let's get into it. Welcome to the podcast,
Thank you very much.
Dr. Tom. First medical doctor.
Really?
Yeah. First any doctor, actually.
Really?
But someone asked me this morning, they're like, is Dr. Tom like a medical doctor or like a doctor of maths or something random? But
Two doctors, actually. So doctor of medicine, but a doctor of philosophy, PhD, so the lab bit and the medical bit.
got it. Yeah, right. Okay. I thought we could start with the business side of your experience, though, if that's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you've done a few things. You've got one current business operating. So what's that one? The current one?
The current one? No one's not the earlier ones.
No, we started with present day.
The current one is the one thing that I'm most interested in because it's kind of driven by a bit of a selfish need for me. So I'm keen classic guitarist for many years. And for many years, I've not been very good at it, but I've been made worse at it because my fingernails are really fragile. Not terribly bad, but they're not great. And as a guitarist, you need to have full, good, strong fingernails. You need to be well looked after. And just doing normal things like, reaching for pockets or laundry basket, one would break, then you can't play for another 3 weeks as it grows through. So that was really frustrating. So having tried various things that are on the market that didn't work well enough for me, I decided I'd do something about it and actually try and come up with something based on science and some medical knowledge, apply it to that, see if we can come up with a solution. And it's really satisfying. And that initial sciencey bit has been good learning, but the bit afterwards where you think, oh, you got your thing, oh, now let's just sell it. That bit I knew absolutely nothing about, and that's been really, really informative.
Yeah, it's half the battle, or even.
Well, I thought getting to a point of a thing that works in the lab and on people, that's 95% job done.
Yeah.
But I understand that's about 4.3% job done.
Yeah.
And it's all the other stuff
Totally.
that makes the difference between something that works versus something that's successful.
Exactly. Yeah. And how have you found that process of getting it out there? So the marketing, the different channels, you've tried a few different things, right?
I find it humbling, which is good.
Yeah.
One thing's a wee bit tricky for me is that I'm a bald middle-aged dude, and most people who want nail treatments, yes, there's some guitarists, but it's mainly ladies who are much more into, fashion and beauty and that sort of stuff. And though that might be a surprise to you, I'm not particularly into that world.
No way.
I'll say that. So I've got some gut feelings about things, and I've also learned that some of those opinions on stuff are best kept to myself. So I focused more on getting the values of the organization right, actually what we want to achieve. If you set that tone and then entrust others, empower them to do the bits that they're good at, and try not to get in the way too much.
Yeah.
In terms of channels and stuff, though, it's all self-funded, so we have to keep our budget quite small. One of the first things I did was wrote to various people who might be interested, and Radio New Zealand did an interview with me, which was really, really helpful at getting the word out in a non-hard sell sort of way, but just sort of, here it is, this is the background story.
Yes. Yeah.
That was Jesse Mulligan. He was very good. That was helpful. But then after that, things sort of they peter off unless you're forever promoting and getting it out there.
Yeah.
And I'm not particularly self-promotional. And so that was a difficult thing for me to actually get in front of people, things, opportunities, try and push it out a little bit, make people aware of it, because they don't know about it, people won't buy it.
That's it. Yeah, the 10X theory or the 10X book comes to mind. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
No, tell me that.
The simple version is that, launching a business or getting something to market and getting velocity is going to be 10 times harder. It's going to take 10 times longer. It's going to cost 10 times more than what most people think.
10 times, yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
And our philosophy is that I want people to use the product and it works for them, and so they become happy return customers, which is a very different situation for if you just want one sale and that's what you're after. I'm after letting people know about it to get as far as them trying it. And if they try it, hopefully it'll help market itself and be word of mouth and that sort of stuff. But it's different from the hard sell, which I'd be even worse at, I think. This is more like letting people know, and I'm pretty more comfortable with that now. And we use it because we're online, because I thought I'd just go to some pharmacist and say, oh, here you go, how about this? But do you know about retail margin? I'm sure you do.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
So in a nutshell, if you have a product and you take it to a retail pharmacy, they'll typically put on at least an 85% margin on the price of that, so pretty much double. And that just puts it way out of the price range that we're thinking of. So it's sort of made us realize fairly soon, well, that's that plan gone. So it's now all online, and then that's through Facebook, Instagram, those sorts of things, which I was not familiar, and also various print stuff and seeing what works and what doesn't, but having to rely on people who know that sort of stuff with some oversight and feedback and things. And it's proved much more difficult than I thought, but we're getting some traction, so I'm optimistic.
Got to be optimistic.
Yes. Well, I prefer to be optimistic based on data rather than just feeling optimistic. So the last few months, it's sort of, now we're doing some of that marketing. It's sort of doubling each month now.
Yeah.
And if we can get one more doubling, then we'll be big enough to then move to Australia, and hopefully thereafter more. Because then that will fund something else that I'm interested in.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute.
Cool.
But yeah, it is an interesting landscape with retail and product-based businesses. We had a guest on recently that for a lot of people that have developed a product, the end goal is to get into retail and get mass distribution. But he got there and then actually pulled out of retail based on margins, based on a number of factors, but it's just interesting.
Well, the way we shop is different. And I've heard of some brands that use that retail thing mainly as the promotional loss leader to gain the brand awareness. And then I just say drop back into more online sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's what's the influence of AI now in how you do your marketing and that sort of stuff. And so that's been interesting, because I said to the marketing guys, how are we going to use that? And they basically said, well, we don't really know yet. No one knows yet what works today for the next 6 months, because who knows what the next 6 months is about.
It's so fast moving, isn't it?
Yeah. So we did try some AI things where before I had the marketing people doing more stuff, it was generating some pictures and promotional type stuff. And that was better than me doing it, and it made it more regular. But it ended up drifting slightly off the brand values and that sort of stuff. It sort of iterates towards, after a while you realize, well, no, that's not what I intended. And I think there's still a big role for humans in there to make sure it stays true to what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I guess it depends a lot on the product as well. Meaning, like if you're looking at it, say a drink that's being purchased daily potentially, or multiple times a day versus like a monthly purchase or a yearly purchase, it's quite different, right?
And then you've got those number of people who are in market, those who are waiting to be in market, and those who are not interested at all.
Yeah.
And because we're trying to market to people who want to look after the nails rather than coat stuff on it. And that's a relatively small market. But if we can reach those people that realize their nails are being damaged by something else, then we can pull them in. So we can't just say, right, try and put Google AdWords on nail strengthener. You've got to go a little bit wider and sort of think of it all laterally. And these sorts of various funnels, for which I knew absolutely nothing, have been interesting. And you have to experiment different things, see what works and what doesn't, have some good data on it, and then make sure you try and back the winners, because otherwise you can spend a lot of money
very easily
down a meta hole.
Yeah, for sure. As a non-guitar player, I thought that a guitar, I thought you used the tip of your finger, not the nail.
Yeah, so some people can, and it depends what style you're playing, because there's classical, which is nylon strings, acoustic, which is more steel strings, so you get a different sound depending on what you want to do. The classical guitar, though, has got a wider neck with strings further apart, and since Andrei Segovia came along, who was a sort of grandfather of modern classical guitar, it's pretty much all about having nails. So it's effectively having 4 different plectrums, all working at different times and independently.
Yeah, right.
And the shape and length and surface of the nail is crucial. If they're too long, for example, they catch and you hook, and you can't get speed.
Wow.
If they're too short, then you get too much of the noise of the finger pulp before you hit the nail, and it gets a bit muffly. So it depends on the shape of your nail and fingers, and you have to experiment a lot to get it just right for the sound that you want.
Yeah, right.
You can make a warm, mellow sound. That tends to be a bit blurry. Others can have a really sharp sound for really high, fast stuff. And if you're just using soft finger pulp, you can't get that, that attack fast sound that's required for some of the pieces. So yeah, you can try it without nails, but it ain't going to sound like it's supposed to.
Got it. Is it true that all people's nails grow at the same rate?
No, there's a whole genetic range of how good your nails are. So a really good, strong nail may not be the fastest, because if you're laying down the matrix that quickly, but it's growing out too much, it may not be quite so thick. So a good one has, medium growth rate and good thickness. but that's your genetic God-given talents. Interestingly, those who are really good performers and good guitar teachers, they tend to naturally have fantastic nails.
Really?
So they're not that interested in products to make it better because they're already that good. And that's partly why they're that good, because they haven't missed practice and they can do what they want and they can still play. So it's the amateurs like me underneath that who have just got average nails. And then come along things that can damage your nails. So people have had chemotherapy, for example, or trauma to the nail bed. Those who've got vitamin deficiencies, those who've got things like anemia or thyroid problems or medical things. There's a whole range of stuff that can affect how fast and how well it grows. But a lot of that's set genetically as to where you're at. As we get a bit less young, they probably get a bit more fragile.
Right.
As you go through menopause, there's less laying down of the keratin that makes them strong. So it does change a bit with time. And yeah, if you're using things like gel nails and acrylics or even nail polish, when you put them on and it comes off, it takes some of the nail off with it. And if you have to use nail polish remover, that also dissolves some of the stuff in the nail. So there's your genetic gifts that you've got, and then what the environment is together, and those two together determine how good they are.
Yeah, right.
What are yours like?
I don't know.
Average at best.
Yeah.
But you keep them short, so we wouldn't know how long they'd grow. Do you bite? Well, I can do nothing about that, sorry.
It's a hard habit to break.
Is it?
It's actually not looking too bad currently.
But you don't need long nails, do you? So
I don't know.
it's all right.
No. Do you know what what these lumps are in the nail?
Is it always like that, or does it move slowly as it goes?
It tends to always be like that, yeah. It's less so on that side, but...
Interesting. So the nail grows out at a certain rate. Usually if there's one lump like that, it means, given they grow roughly about 1 millimeter every week or so, that so many millimeters of weeks ago, something happened in there which causes some upset. So, for example, if you were poorly at that time or had chemotherapy, I hope we haven't had, need to do that, that can cause an injury there which then grows out with time. If it's always at that one spot, then it implies that there's something underneath the nail that's there. So the shape of the nail often mirrors what the bone is doing underneath.
Right.
So it may be that you've got just happen to have a little lump in the bone in your last, what they call metacarpal. That means you've got a little bit of a wave to get over.
Right. Yeah.
I think you'll be all right.
You think so? Don't Google it though, right?
I'll speak to you afterwards. Sorry.
Oh, man. Now I'm really sweating. All right, cool. So that's the nail business. So you're online currently. So a good customer is a classical guitar player or a person that wants to strengthen their nail.
For the classical guitarist, it's ideal.
Yes.
But I think they're just a very small population, so that gives it proof of authenticity that it works in a group that really need it to work. So it's not about how it feels or how it looks, it's are they stronger. But the ones that are probably the larger ideal target is ladies generally, who've either damaged their nails from gels and stuff and want to get off that cycle.
Yeah, cool.
Or those people that are slightly more mature, maybe going through menopause, who the nails are getting stronger, they're getting weaker, maybe hair's a bit weaker, and they're trying to sort of look after themselves a bit better rather than be doing things that are a bit more harmful. So probably that middle group is the biggest target market from a business point of view, and the guitarists just add the authenticity so this stuff works.
Got it, yeah. And what's the application process? Is it daily? Is it?
Yeah, there's a cream and a liquid, and they've got different things in them. And the tests that we did in the lab and on people were just once a day at night, putting it on, let it absorb in about a minute or so, job done. Probably the more you use it, the better, but that was what we thought would be a realistic thing for people to use. And it typically takes 2 or 3 weeks to get up to strength and wears off in a similar amount of time.
What's the current price point for both products?
The cream is $39 and that lasts for about 3 months. And if the cream and the liquid together is $69. And when we did the trials with just the cream, that worked on 95% of people. If we use the two together, that's when 100% of the guitarists and people it worked well on. And similarly in the lab, the cream makes your nails about 30% stronger after 10 days, but the two together makes it 78% stronger after 2 weeks. So for most people, the cream is enough. Yeah. But for those that are genetically weaker or they're more damaged, or they're guitarists and they really, really want them strong, then the combination is the way to go.
Got it. Very interesting. I love how a lot of business ideas come from a personal problem, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was insightful for me is that a lot of my ideas are really bad. And this came around from cutting the grass and cutting cabbage tree leaves. Oh, yeah. And they're really, really tough. And I thought, we could somehow combine them onto something on the nail. And that turned out to not be a great idea. But there were some other ideas in there that I then took to Lincoln University, the Lincoln Agritech, and they had the scientific knowledge in the area to work out which of my ideas were going to be useful and which they can combine together. So it was very satisfying going back to basics and doing stuff in a lab, getting something that worked, and then into humans and then into the population. That process has been really interesting, with a few points where we could have either just given up because it wasn't working. So having got through those hurdles has been very satisfying.
Iterating, yeah. Have you always had, business ideas and like been sort of entrepreneurial, or is that a recent thing? Or?
That's something which has developed more recently. So most of the time I've just been working in the hospital, and often when you're doing a job like that, it's all consuming. You don't really have any headspace to do very much else. But about probably 10 years ago now, I was finding that I'd done it long enough that it was, not that it was getting boring, but that I was looking for some different challenges as well, which lined up with a friend of mine who similarly had been working as an employee, and he wanted to do something. So we got together to try and see if we could work together. We'd been in the same maternity group, so we'd been friends. And then it's another step to, do you go into a business with friends or families or pets? It's like these films, they go wrong. So we started off with a small conference company where we organized some medical conferences.
Oh, yeah.
So I had the contacts and he had the organization, and then we sort of did some conferences in various places, including Pacific Islands and Australia.
Yeah.
That worked well, and that went on for 3 or 4 years, which I guess proved to us that we could work together. And then we bought a small IT company, and for the last 10 years we've been growing that. I've sort of taken a step back from that now because it's starting to get too successful, and I was being more of a hindrance than help.
Got it.
That was where I got most of my business learning from my business partner and that experience.
Got it.
And then thinking, okay, well, these things, you can actually do stuff. I had some health issues, so I had to work part-time in the hospital, which meant I had some time off to recover from that. And that gave me the headspace to think about, what might I try? And then when you start trying these things and they start working, then it sort of builds momentum, and you realize, geez, all these things I could have done before that I just never even thought of doing.
Yeah, I guess there's a crossroads at all points in life, isn't there?
There is. I have the luxury of being financially secure enough that I can spend a bit of time doing these things, because most of us, and for most of my working career, there wasn't any financial headroom to do that. You just have to get the bills paid and that sort of stuff. But now, a bit later in my career, there's opportunities to do other things, and I kind of feel that, geez, time is short. I got to do them now because might not be here tomorrow.
So true, right? Yeah, I've got that. Have you seen those posters that have weeks of your life?
Yes.
Have you seen those?
Dotted out. There's not many left to say.
Well, I just got rid of mine, actually. It's too depressing to look at. So I was like, I don't need this.
If it's a nudge that says, okay, make the best out of today, then I think it's a positive. Whereas if it's just a negative countdown, then that's not really the sort of mindset I'm looking for.
Exactly.
But it's in some ways it gives you freedom to think, well, yeah, try it within a realm that you can afford for it to go wrong. So I never do things I can't afford for it not to work. So I don't want the stress of having, mortgages and things to worry about. But within that zone, I'm keen to do more and more things, and may over the next few years move away completely from medicine and do other stuff depending on what opportunities arise.
Yeah. And so the IT company is still operating, but you're out of it day to day, or in most capacities? Or?
Yep. So there's Ember Technology and Green Halo are the two organizations. I used to be chairman, but I've resigned from the board last year, just a minority shareholder now. Ember Technology do all sorts of fantastic stuff, including using robotic process automation, incorporating AI into bespoke systems for various other companies. And the Green Halo is a sort of passion project for my business partner and I, and it's an automated system to count carbon emissions for big corporates. So a number of the big agricultural corporates are using that to automatically measure their carbon footprint for reporting. Interestingly, the government here did have some quite strong rules about who was going to have to report. More and more companies are going to have to, but it's kind of gone off the radar. And it's now the overseas companies that are demanding that they want to know what the carbon footprint is in order for these agricultural corporates to be able to sell their meat and produce overseas. They need to have measured it because of their customer requirements rather than the New Zealand government ones, which is interesting.
Man, that is interesting.
It'll probably develop with time, but I think in a world of chaos and where things are financially really difficult, I think the environmental priority has dropped down. Hopefully it'll come back up with time, because it's not something we can afford to ignore for much longer.
So with the IT business, was there any big takeaways over that span of time?
Yeah.
Like from the day you guys bought it through to sort of leaving it?
Yeah, there are a few big learnings in there. One was that about 3 or so years into it, But about 2 years into it, I had some major health problems. My heart valve packed in, and that required a couple of operations, and that was difficult. But that was more an issue for my colleagues rather than me. But then soon after that, my business partner got pancreatic cancer that was thought to be terminal and would only last a few months.
Wow.
Thankfully, he had a very rare type, and he's done remarkably well with chemo and surgery, and he's fitter than me. Long may that last forever. But at that time, it looked like he was going to not be with us. I had to step in to try and steady the ship and do negotiations with other companies, and it was massively stressful. One of the personal insights from that, as well as having to support my friend through all that, was that it made me realize in my job at work in the hospital, generally, we're trying to be truthful with each other, and we're together trying to find the combined plan to get to where we both want to be, which is the best outcome for the patient. So there's generally no lying involved. Sometimes patients won't come forward with all their story, and you have to sort of have the radar on to try and get to the bottom of what's going on. But generally, it's all aligned to the same outcome. But in these sort of business negotiations, I realized that's not how it works. There was one company, for example, who had sold out just after we'd got a big contract with them lasting for 3 years that we were really depending on. And he just said, oh, we're ripping that up. We're going with someone else. See you later. And so then we had to have a whole discussion to try and work out a solution to that. And I found that really, really uncomfortable because he would lie to me and I was having to withhold some stuff to him, and it was all part of this battle. And I just found that really uncomfortable. But I'm aware that other people who are used to that environment, they enjoy that. That's day to day. That's their game, if you like. But it made me realize, geez, I need to avoid being in those situations because they're counter to how I operate. And so I'm best getting someone else who's good at that to do that.
Yes.
And stick to what feels comfortable to me. But that's one of those things which I just totally wasn't aware of till I was trying to work out, why am I not sleeping here? Why is this feeling awful? Why am I dreading this phone call? So that was insightful.
That is interesting, isn't it? I think for the most part, in my experience anyway, that, people in business or entrepreneurs, I think generally the bulk of them are good people and have good intentions. And, I think there's a really small sliver at one end of the spectrum of hardcore, just that are win at all costs.
And that group was like this negotiation. It was a venture capitalist who were buying this chain of physiotherapists, and they were trying to strip out all the costs, repackage it, and then sell it on.
Right. Yeah.
So it was that super corporate environment of no personal interaction, no even care for what the other one might be feeling or wanting out of it. Just, this is what I want, screw you. And I just thought, geez, I'm just not used to this. And I'm probably really bad at it, so I better get someone else to do those things.
It's probably quite different in New Zealand versus other parts of the world, right?
I think you're probably right. One of the benefits of Christchurch is that most people know everybody. So if you don't behave well with high ethics and you're not kind to people, that will quite quickly come around and your reputation can get tarnished pretty quickly.
Yes.
I noticed that in the hospital as well, because I've been used to bigger hospitals in Europe, where surgeons, you might never see them again, and they might be rude to you, or an orthopedic surgeon or neurosurgeon. They're notoriously rude and offensive, but you'll never see them again, so they can get away with that. Whereas in Christchurch, it's a lot smaller. If someone's rude to you on day one, you're probably going to see them on day 4 or 5.
Yes.
You might see them in a cafe and have a chat to them. And I think that's a good moderator to make sure that we behave kindly to each other in a professional way. And I think in Christchurch in general, it's a bit like that as well, isn't it?
I think so.
Most people know people.
Yeah, it's pretty interconnected. But yet, there is still that section that's a bit ruthless, right?
Which section is that?
The hardcore, win at all costs, the sort of people that are more I guess the old school mindset, right? Of win-lose versus win-win. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's just.
Have you come across those situations?
A little bit, not many, but
right.
I tend to choose who I hang out with.
Yeah, I think if you're bitten by that once, you can either choose to be in that and swim with the sharks, or actually let's just go over here and snorkel happily with the parrotfish.
Yeah. But then down the other end is I wouldn't say complacent, but sort of the cruisier, more less driven individual, right? And so again, the spectrum approach of hardcore down this end and chill down this end.
What my business partner, one of his frustrations was that he experienced that the mindset for even successful people was if they got the business, the batch, and the boat, they're happy. Job done. That's that's the top whatever percent. That's it. I'm sort of done. And he was sort of thinking if you can get that, then why stop there? Now, maybe you don't want to do any much further, but that shouldn't necessarily be the peak of ambition. If you've got some larger thing that you want to do, move on from that rather than sort of. You saw a lot of people sort of cruise. So a lot of businesses therefore cruise because they take their cues from the the leadership. And if your leader's just happy in his boat, doing not very much,
Yeah.
then that percolates through. So you've got to set the example that you want the organization to achieve and then execute.
It's really, good perspective. I guess whether you choose to believe in tall poppy syndrome or not, I guess it ties into that somewhat, and that, a lot of people within New Zealand, maybe who haven't had global experience, they are contained to that ecosystem that we're in. So,
Have you been tall poppied?
what do you mean? Like,
Someone criticizing or trying to block things or be a bit sort of spiteful if you see someone doing better than the other?
definitely. Yeah. Like, I tend to not pay too much attention to it, and it's quite rare, like I definitely noticed it on some podcast episodes, actually.
Oh, yes.
There's one that comes to mind, and there was...
Did you cut someone down?
Not me. No, God, no, not me. No. No, but there were some comments around this guest, and I was like, oh man, that's super negative. That's very misaligned with what I believe and my mindset. So yeah, it's out there, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that, contrast of having lived in North America for quite a while and coming back here, I definitely felt it when I first came back. So I think it exists.
I think there's probably a cultural sort of conservatism which has been around for a while.
Yeah.
And I'm also quite a believer that if you have a society where the gap between the rich and the poor is not super wide, so you've got a bit more of a narrower band, that's when societies tend to flourish better. So on one side, if people are doing really well, is that widening the gap? But then I guess it depends if there's taxation and other things that allow that person to succeed but not to be chopped off, because they'd like to be generating wealth and jobs and that sort of stuff. So I think we should be encouraging poppies to grow and not cutting them down.
Massively.
But at the same time, if you've got lots of tall poppies and lots of people struggling, I feel uncomfortable in that, and there needs to be some way to redistribute wealth that still provides the incentive to achieve highly, but also is the safety net for those people, for whatever reasons, don't do so well. I think I've had the wind in my back since the moment I was born. Caring parents, it was a safe country. I got educated. I was lucky enough to be reasonably bright. None of that's to my credit, but take the end working in the hospital where you see everybody, you can see those other people who are born in the exact opposite situation through no fault of their own, but their trajectory is almost mapped out, and it's really hard to nudge that off at all. So whilst we're feeling all proud of ourselves for doing well here, you can't forget what it's like for the real person on the street who needs to pay their bills and the food and that sort of stuff.
It's a really good reminder.
The hospital is a great grounder from that point of view, because it's not any one social group, it's everybody at their most vulnerable, and you get a real insight to how people live, and it's pretty humbling.
I couldn't agree more. I've spent a little bit of time in hospitals recently, and I've been blown away by that exact same thing. I think you tend to form echo chambers around your life and habits, and I think until you're in an environment like the hospital, which is a leveler, right? It is easy to forget.
You've read the Black Swan book?
I've heard of it. I'm familiar with it roughly.
So a little snapshot of that is that if you're from Europe, you see a swan, it's white. Great. You go to another pond, 3 swans, they're all white. Great. Swans must be white. I go to an even bigger pond, a bigger lake, and they're all white. Great, they're all white. Those increasing reinforcements haven't questioned your hypothesis. They've reinforced it a little bit, but you don't get incremental support by seeing the same thing often and often. But then you go somewhere else and you see one black swan, and that's the thing that blows your whole hypothesis. So as soon as you have some idea of something, you shouldn't look for more things that support it. You should be actively looking for things that disagree with it, because that's where you get the value from, is those things that question what you believe.
Oh,
so like in an echo chamber, we hang out and we hear all the same stuff we like. So that's when I would suggest people need to force themselves out of that echo chamber or other environments where you're looking for the thing that's contrary to what you believe. But with social media and things now, we pick the news channel we want. We pick the feed that we get that just adds more reinforcement to what we believe, which is why I think it's wise that we actively look for the opposite side and try and be a bit more balanced about those opinions rather than just reinforce our little echo chamber. We're all guilty of it, I think. So I think one has to force yourself to get into that uncomfortable area where people disagree with you.
It's a good idea. Yeah. I had that criticism recently with the podcast guests all essentially being very similar. Not all of them, but a lot of them being quite similar.
White middle-aged ball men.
Exactly. Nah. Entrepreneurial, probably come from a relatively good background, started a business, the business is going well, etc. In summary, right? So I guess having some contrast to that would be interesting.
Shall I be a complete failure for the next year or two and come back, and then you can have some balance?
No, don't do that. Don't do that.
One example of that is that a lot of people have had difficulties are less likely to reach out to you to be on a podcast because they might be embarrassed by it or not want to share those sorts of things. So you're not hearing the failures from which you could probably learn a whole lot. And for a while, I was a financial advisor. I didn't charge anyone, but I did it sort of for charitable reasons. And in that situation, I found a lot of people that came to me, obviously it's confidential, but they'd done things that had gone wrong.
Right.
And so it was a really good example of misfortune or poor judgment or whatever. It was often actually a married couple, probably both doctors, where they'd separated, and then you're left with big bills but one income, and
Yes. Yeah.
perhaps the one partner had never looked after the finances and they didn't know what was going on. And so getting insight into where things have gone wrong is something that I try and look for, because there's gold learning there, even though it can be quite painful at times.
So hang on, let's just back up for a minute. So you're a financial advisor?
The story from that was just about the time of the earthquakes, I finally managed to get mortgage free. We'd bought some properties, done them up and done some things, and then earthquake comes and wrecks the house, which is a bit unfortunate. But at that point, the mortgage was paid for, so there's potentially some extra cash to invest in things. I thought, well, what am I going to do with that? So I sort of read some books and I spoke to some friends, and I asked like 4 different friends, what would you do with it? And they all gave me 4 different suggestions based on what would work for them.
Yes.
And they kept their mistakes quiet.
Yes.
So it's okay, you got to know where the information is coming from because it's likely to be biased. So then I read some books on it, about, property development, investing and that sort of stuff. And they were okay, but I thought they're probably a bit biased as well, depending on who's writing it, because the property person said, buy property, and the share person said, buy some shares.
Yeah.
And no one said, get into business, because it doesn't do them any good directly, so they don't publish those books. So I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll do the course for financial advisors, because that'll be nice and biased and give me everything I need to know, and then I'll just do that. So I did the course for financial advisors, not intending to become registered, but just to learn from it. And that was helpful because there was some helpful stuff in there, but it did make me realize that that amount of knowledge is pretty small. And if you really want to be skilled at it, it's like learning a whole new industry. So you need to read a whole lot more. So read a whole lot more, and in a nutshell, did the things, and they worked very well. We were very lucky or sensible or a bit of both. And so about fast forward 10 or so years later, there were other colleagues coming to me saying, oh, what should I do? And I thought, oh, that might be interesting if I then become registered and I can offer that as a service. I'd learned from that. So I did the course again, actually got registered, set myself up as that. It was mainly sort of word of mouth through medical colleagues. And yeah, so about 20 different people, and guided them through what to do. Often it was breaking bad news because they're in these difficult situations.
Right. Yeah.
I did that for about 3 years. And then at that point, you have to get your whole business audited if you're a registered financial advisor.
Right.
And that was going to cost many tens of thousands, and I'd made 9/10 of nothing because I didn't charge anyone. So I thought, well, that was interesting, that was learning, but stopped doing that after a little while.
Did you find with the medical community, doctors especially, did you find that lifestyle creep was a thing? Yeah.
There were 2 big factors. One was doctors tend to be quite bright. They tend to be type A personalities, and they're in a little niche. And so they've got confidence and sometimes an arrogance, and they tend to believe that they're competent in all areas just because they're competent in one. So they think, oh, I'm a good surgeon, I'm bound to be a good investor. And
No brainer.
yeah, obviously.
Obviously.
Right. And I'll be a professional basketball player, and all this, but not so much self-awareness. So there was that issue at stake, but there was also, everyone's in the same medical year getting jobs and stuff, and someone's got a nice house, and you've got a decent wage coming in, you've got banks willing to throw as much money at you as you want. So people get nice big houses and they borrow to buy cars, and they basically borrow for their assets. And as they get further up in their career, they get a bit more income, and they just spend more to fill up that gap. Oh, and then they've got private school fees and all these sorts of things. And so the expenses are huge. The income just matches it, but all along there's not been any genuine investing going on. It just looks beautiful, feels nice, but is not building a decent portfolio of personal wealth. And often there was a marriage in there, and the male partner would say, I'll sort that out, don't you worry about it. And when it comes to actually examining what it's like, some of those people were let down because they were either doing dodgy things or silly things or buying sports cars, and the partner who wasn't inquisitive assumed everything was fine because it looks fine. I've got a nice swimming pool.
Yes.
But underneath that, it's not healthy at all.
Yeah, totally.
Now, I didn't see people who'd done really well because they didn't need to see me. So it was a biased subset that I saw.
Got it. Yeah.
But definitely expense creep. And from the male, pardon my sexism, the arrogance that you're going to be good at all things because you're good at one.
There's a lot of good books on finance and wealth creation, like Rich Dad, Poor Dad comes to mind, The Millionaire Next Door. And they sort of speak to those trends that you've mentioned, right?
They do. And I found the Rich Dad, Poor Dad one of the first ones I read, and that was really interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, don't give a man a fish, teach him how to fish.
Yeah.
And things like, even just like financial planning for dummies, a trusted source of relatively unbiased information. And they're all helpful, but like with financial advice, you've got to look where the information is coming from. Because if it's a real estate agent or a stockbroker or a business vendor, they're going to tell you what they think you should do. Even if it's subconscious, it's at least partly for their own purposes than yours,
Well, that's the interesting thing about the financial advisory world, right? Is that they're either, selling something of some sort.
Yeah.
And they're not generally fee for service. So there is a bias of some sort.
Absolutely.
Which is sort of questionable. You'd think there'd be rules around that.
I mean, there are rules and they should be disclaimed, and you've got all the small print stuff, but do we all read all that? No. But I learned from this that if as an advisor, you sell someone advise a particular KiwiSaver, and they take that KiwiSaver, for the rest of the existence of that KiwiSaver, the person that advised it gets a small percentage forevermore. For just one bit of advice, you're going to get paid for the next 20, 30 years. And that's at the expense of the investor, because the purpose is that they get the money, not the person that's advised you once. So there's a conflict of interest there, which is managed and mitigated, but I still think the model is such that it's not directed purely at the best outcome for the investor, because everyone else needs to get that little bit of cut along the way. Quite how you manage that and make it proportional and fair, I don't know. But I felt uncomfortable charging anyone, because the whole point is that you're the person who's got financial problems. Why should I be taking stuff off you?
Help. Yeah.
I went to one right at the start when I was trying to learn about it, and he's going to charge me $5,000 to give me a plan. I'm sure the plan would be great, but I didn't have $5,000. That's why I go into a financial advisor. So even the upfront one-off cost that might be more transparent, that's at a time where the person's looking for wealth rather than already got it. So it's difficult to find the model there that I think serves the investor correctly, but also rewards the person providing what is a hopefully essential or substantial service.
Yeah, I guess it speaks to the problems that exist that are very challenging to solve. On the surface, it looks relatively easy, but when you start looking at those different realities, that's...
Yeah, and most financially successful individuals don't set themselves up as financial advisors. It's usually younger people who've done the course and want to achieve wealth, but they probably haven't gone through the experience of property development, of investing in all the different shares that you can do, and then getting into private business and all that whole thing. They've not been there, done that.
Yeah.
They're just suggesting that you go there and do that, which is why trying to get advice from a mentor or someone that has actually done it is really helpful. But they will be biased to advise what's been helpful for them over the previous 20 years, rather than what's going to be helpful for you over the next 20 years. So I always advise you need to get lots of different information from different angles, and then assimilate that and work out what best for you based on your risk profile and your timelines and things like that.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's why I'm a fan of those different books that do sort of come at it from a different angle, but yeah, again, just context, right? Additional points of view, and if you can get one strategy out of a book, then that's great.
And then put it into action, but then review it. So every few years or whatever, see what's worked and what's not, and adjust accordingly. Because when you're age X, you don't know quite what you want to be doing in 30 years' time. You might only know in the next 5 years, I might want to do this, and I've got some vague idea thereafter. So you do need to sort of adjust it as you go. But if you have no plan, you're not very likely to reach the future you want. And most people haven't actually visualized what future they want. They're just looking at the next paycheck or the next 6 months or the next holiday. So to try and get people to work out how they would want to live their ideal life, when they're on the deathbed and they look back, what's it look like? Once you picture that, it makes all the decisions leading up to that much easier.
Yeah.
But without that, it becomes a bit of a soulless search for wealth. Whereas if you want to work part-time and visit the Andes or whatever, and you've got something that's important to you as a value, then it's much easier to work out how to get there and what you might want to sacrifice in order to reach it.
Yeah.
Whether it's worthwhile doing that or not.
It's good perspective. Yeah. I'm a massive advocate of that with all of the coaching clients. It's really about finding that North Star, or trying to define roughly where you're heading. and also not falling into the trap of needing to scale for the sake of it.
Yep.
Because that's not always the answer.
I've found myself floundering at times, trying to work out what it is that I'm actually chasing. Is it a financial stuff, which is all about ego and status and things like that? Or is it about some more purpose-driven stuff? And, I've spoken to various coaches about it, and it was really helpful working out that I need to have projects that last a few years. They need to have inherent value, so you're doing something useful. And they need to require learning and also giving other people opportunities that wouldn't otherwise have it. If a project's got those sorts of things in it, then those are the ones that attract me. If they happen to need scale for another endpoint, that's fine, but it's not scale on its own. It's achieving that learning and all those little problems along the way, fixing them. That's really satisfying, I find.
I like that when you can figure out or unravel what makes you tick, and if it is a project-based thing that has got a relatively defined time frame.
And it wasn't obvious to me what they were. It's only when we looked back at the various different things and picked out what were the success factors, what were the things that really sparked it, that you could actually distill out what the key things were. And then there was about 5 things I was thinking of doing. You could easily tick which ones fit those criteria and which didn't. And that gave quite a lot of clarity.
Have you read the book Die with Zero?
No.
No. So it's a bit of a contrarian approach to a lot of the way the world's worked and what people are aiming towards. So instead of the usual, which is to, go through life, earn, save,
Accumulate
toward retirement, it's a bit more like, don't necessarily try to accumulate wealth at the cost of lifestyle. So not be reckless, but also, don't save it to the end, because there might not be any end, or your end might come sooner than you think.
That's right. And if you knew when you were going to die, that'd be really helpful for planning these sorts of things. But nowadays, if you end up living for a long, long time, and in my job, I see a lot of people like that who are not necessarily having the great quality of life, but they're still around and they're still expensive to be looked after. It's quite difficult to know how big does one's pot need to be in order to not get penalized for living long.
Yes.
And so then it brings you down to, do you just have a situation where you build your wealth and then you chop it down expecting to die at 85 or 88 or whatever? Or do you aim for enough that you can live off the proceeds from that, so it's not going to run out? But then if that's the case, you'd like to have a lot left over. And then that might, what's that going to do? It might ruin your kids because they've got all this assets that they don't know what to do with.
Yes. And that's the other point, is that a lot of people are, wanting to provide for their kids, which is nice and noble, but does that really serve them? Does that usually end well?
I think
not always.
I think it's more often than not a bad thing.
Exactly.
I think you need to have to learn how to earn it and the value of each dollar, so that you've got the skills round about you to deal with if it does come. I think if you give a young person a whole lot of money early on, it's almost certain going to ruin them. So one of the things I found helpful is have things in a trust, which says that this can only go to the kids if it's for something that's going to increase their education or their independence. So it doesn't go for a car, maybe a house, but not for holidays and that sort of stuff. But if it's for a university course, or if it's for starting a new business, you've got a sensible business plan, then maybe. And I'm hoping to live long enough that by the time my wife and I shuffle off, they'll already be mature adults who are, 40, 50, and have already done their own thing.
Yes.
It's a bit of a tricky one, because nowadays, obviously getting into the property market is really difficult, and the time they might need it is right about now when they're in their mid-20s.
Yes.
But I think I agree with you. If you were to just give them a house or give them a deposit, that doesn't set them up for learning how to manage their future self.
Right?
Yeah.
But like lotto winners, isn't it?
It is. Most of them end up unhappy, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So, but they haven't learned how to deal with it, how to earn it, and how to solve those problems. Because I imagine having much more wealth just creates lots of different problems. Exactly. You don't have to worry about your food and that sort of stuff, but you do have to worry about other things.
There was actually one of the more interesting guests that I've had on here. So the name of the podcast used to be called 10 Million in 10 Years.
Yes.
Which is a goal I set myself. And so I had a guest that had, 10 million plus in net wealth. And, he was just drilling me on, why are you trying to aim toward this? Like, it doesn't solve everything. Trust me. It's just different problems.
A figure is not necessarily a goal that's going to work well.
No.
Because what you do when you reach that figure. Because I had this thought experiment the other day when people were around and said, say you had some situation, like be it, some random millionaire uncle died and you got this inheritance that you'd get 200 grand every month forever. So that's a wild sort of amount, what would you do with it? And there was various things. Well, I'd buy this little toy and a few bits and bobs. But it became quite clear that after a while, there's only so many toys that you need. And then you're left with more than you can possibly spend unless you're going to be completely obscene about it. So then you think, okay, well, you need to give it away. Okay, so what are the causes that you're going to give it away to? It's not enough that you can change the world. So what are the things that are important to you? How do you give that most effectively? Do you give it to a charity that's already working in that space? All these sorts of things. So yes, in some ways they're nice problems to have, but just having...
It's still a problem though, isn't it?
Yeah, you've got to do it. I mean, you'd be socially irresponsible if you just let it acquire and not go to any good for society. And then what if you say, oh, I'm going to go for this cause, and then one of your mates knocks on and says, oh, I've just had a problem, my house is burnt down, can you buy me a house because you've got lots of money? Oh, okay, yeah, sure. And then the next 3 people turn up. You've only got enough for one. It's a whole lot of problems. I think I'd be up for them. But I think if you're just aiming for a figure, that's soulless. I think if you're aiming for a particular purpose-driven thing that's important for you, that's much better. And if some uncle happens to die and leave a whole lot of cash, you've got to be really careful and thoughtful about how you make the best use of that, because it would be, obscene and a waste to keep it to yourself, or just poison your family with it. You'd have to set some higher goals and criteria to make sure it was went to the best purpose.
Yeah, I guess the other misconception is that it's going to equal happiness,
But there's that curve, isn't it? That when that study was done, the happiness leveled off at about 100,000, and beyond that,
something like that.
It's sort of
pretty flat.
I think that's not been fully inflation adjusted, but it's a relatively modest amount that gives you the most happiness you're going to get with money. Thereafter, it's different problems that you got.
Yeah, it is really interesting, isn't it? I think once you get to a certain point, you do realize that it's not going to equal much more happiness.
Now, if it means that you can go to the supermarket and you don't have to look at the price of food, and you can go to the petrol station and do the things that you need to do, I think that's golden. Beyond that, it's more about
diminishing returns.
Absolutely, yeah. And if that becomes a thing you're chasing, your shiny star, then that probably makes you less likely to have mates or proper relationships, which is crucial for happiness, of course.
Yeah. Have one of these if you like.
Oh.
There's sparkling water from Damn Good Waters. There's different flavors.
What have you got? I'll go for citrus, please.
We've got peach, and that's the plain, so that's just
I'll go citrus.
Flavor.
I did see a beaver in the wild recently.
Yeah, you were saying. That's really interesting. They're quite cool animals, aren't they?
They're very entertaining, and they cause a lot of river issues, big dams and stuff.
Yeah.
But they're tremendous structures that they make.
Yeah.
Cheers.
When I lived in Canada, I saw a few wild beavers, which is
they can be cool. Big things as well,
They're
can't they?
quite big, yeah. But yours was somewhere else.
This was in Italy. They've been reintroduced, I think, about 20 years ago, and there's not that many of them. And I was just walking past an airport, and there's a sort of drain by the side with some ducks and 2 happy beavers beavering away.
Was that in Venice, did you say?
Yeah.
Wow.
So Venice, obviously, on the island, this is the airport, which is on the mainland.
Yeah.
And they're basically in a sort of drainage channel, just doing their thing.
Why did they reintroduce them, do you know?
I don't know the details, but they were there. They went extinct. I think habitat issues, and brought back in.
Man, crazy.
Because there's talk about doing that potentially in Scotland and places like that, where when you're reintroducing an animal into that environment and the ecosystem that's balanced, is that the right thing to do? I don't know. Leading to it.
I guess there's all these flow-on effects that
there is
are quite unknown. A lot of variables.
Yeah, if you bring a species into a strange environment, it can cause all sorts of trouble.
Wow, this ties perfectly into
we hadn't planned that, had we?
Yeah. I think you were just like playing chess, not checkers. You knew what you're doing.
Cheers to that.
So Dynamo, rock snot.
Yes. So for those who are not familiar with it, Dynamo is an alga, stuff that's in rivers. It came into New Zealand as an invasive pest species, and it was found in 2004. And if it affects a river, it's a shocker. It turns it into what was a pristine crystal biodiverse environment, basically a matted sort of greeny brown sewer. It can make like 20, 30 centimeters of this sludge at the bottom of rivers, which just suffocates it. It's pretty much in all the South Island rivers, affects some more than others. But over the last 20 years, I've seen the rivers go from beautiful and just, picture postcard type stuff to things that are just really, really sad to see. The government was interested in the start when they thought it was going to wipe out all the rivers. They've now lost interest, and they've got other invasive species that are higher up on their priority list. So there's no research that I'm aware of looking into controlling it. So we either let it just carry on. It's not in the North Island yet, but it probably will get there sooner or later. So I'm trying to come up with a research program that learns more about Didymmo and hopefully leads us to some way of potentially controlling it. That would be a long way off, but I want to try and take those steps. So I want the nail business to grow big enough that it can fund that, at least the initial stages, to get it off the ground and then get other people involved to try and get the rivers back to what they were pre-2004.
Where did it come from, sorry?
It's endemic in North America. So probably it came on the boots of a tourist.
Right.
And some of the fishing boots used to have felt in them that could stay wet. So if you're wading in a North American river, there'd be some Didymmo still alive. Put your boots on over here, released, and off you go.
Is it as big a problem in North America?
It's not. It's evolved there. So there may be other things that keep it in balance. But also it doesn't cause so much of a problem when there are more nutrients in the water. So more phosphorus and things like that. So if you transplant it into some of our Southland rivers that are pristine, relatively free of things like fertilizer and those sorts of nutrients, it's unhappy in that situation. And that's when it grows all this rock snot. So they're placed in an environment that makes them cause all sorts of problems where they don't elsewhere.
Right.
It's now gone to South America as well. And it seems to be causing more of a problem in those countries than it did. So there might be some other factors, be it global warming or something else that's making them misbehave. But it causes them most problems here because of this transplantation into environment, which is just not coped to deal with it.
Right, gotcha. And so in terms of a solution or a defense mechanism against it, what roughly are you thinking? Is it some other kind of natural organism to offset it? Or?
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, there'd be some little bug that eats it that would then grow really big and fat from eating all this stuff, and then the trout would eat it and they'd get even bigger because I'm a keen fisherman. That'd be good, wouldn't it? But that's a bit like introducing your stoats and things potentially. So in Didymmo, it's special because it can live happily and not make the rock snot, or when it's unhappy, it turns on a switch and starts making the rock snot. So to control it, you wouldn't have to kill it. You just have to turn off that switch that already exists within the Didymmo.
Right.
We know that things like phosphorus and things can turn that switch, but if you can interfere with that switch by getting silencing RNA into that Didymmo, it would potentially make it feel like it was happy and stop making the stuff. So in a nutshell, instead of using non-discriminatory pesticides and stuff like that, it would be RNA-based. Similar things are already used on the Colorado beetle, that's a potato pest, and also on myrtle rust, which is a fungus that affects some of the plants, like manuka plants and things. So it's taking that same technology, but using it in an aquatic environment that hasn't been done yet. So long way to go to try and understand it better. And in amongst that, there's always going to be some risks involved that you need to fully understand and mitigate. But we're just at the very first step. And we've raised enough money to do our first study, which is to try and look for any existing viruses that exist in Didymmo that down the track we might be able to use to deliver the RNA into the bugs. But a lot of work to go. But I want to just try and do one step at a time rather than just allow the rivers to just say, oh, well, too hard. There is, as well as the tourist impact and angling like recreational, it does affect like irrigators and hydropower stations and things by blocking up their stuff. So there'd be an economic benefit to New Zealand Inc. if we could get it working, as well as the tourist and recreational one as well.
Are there any current tools to mitigate it or to decrease it, or nothing?
In 2006, so a couple of years into it arriving, they found that this copper chemical was quite good at killing it off in the lab. It got it down to 2% from 100%. So they set up some really good studies where they found a little stream called the Princess Creek in Southland, and they put cages of rainbow trout at various points, released the copper into the stream to see what happened to the Didymmo and to make sure that the aquatic life wasn't affected. It got rid of a lot of the Didymmo. It dropped it down from sort of 80% viability down to like 5%. But it killed the fish. And it's still in that creek and it's still persisting. So yes, you can kill the Didymmo, but you'll kill the river in the process.
Right.
So it was a good study, but a good reminder of you've got to do these tests to see what something works, and in a limited way. Since that one, there's been, as far as I'm aware, nothing else done, nothing else tried. There's no solution at present. It's just growing wild. The Didymmo, if we can get this to work in Didymmo, that same blueprint you could use for other invasive species. So we're hoping that if it works, the knock-on effect is things like gold clams and all these other things that are on the MPI priority list. You might be able to just use the same method for that. So it's an important step for me personally, and selfishly, it goes back to my selfish needs as a fisherman. But the bigger knock-on is that there could be a much wider benefit to New Zealand and other countries with invasive species if it works and is safe. But that's a 10, 20-year type project. So I'm just starting now.
What's RNA?
RNA is like a photocopy you take of your DNA. So DNA is the stuff inside your cells. It's a recipe book for whatever that cell needs to do. RNA is the message by which you take a photocopy of one gene, bring it into the cell cytoplasm, the main bit, where it makes that protein. So if you can identify the RNA code that makes rock snot, if you can make the complementary code, it will stick to it and it'll stop that message from going as far as making the protein. So it's a way of interrupting a sort of a chain of molecular events in the bug that will only affect that particular molecule. So the beauty of it is, unlike an indiscriminate copper, it would only go for an organism that has that particular enzyme in it. And it's not killing the thing, it's just turning down how much it's making. That's how it's worked in other situations, and that's what we'd try and mimic. But yeah, a lot of work to be done. And if it ever got outside the lab, it would need to have the social license to operate as well. So then you'd have to have biosecurity, MPI, all that sort of stuff. I'm just trying to do the lab bits to show, here's the tools, guys, this could work.
Prove it works, yeah.
Yeah, and then allow the other agencies to decide if they want to go with it with the permission of, our democratic society.
Yeah.
And it falls under some of the legislation to do with gene modification, that sort of stuff. It's not gene modification, but still under that same legislation, which is going through Parliament at the moment. So hoping by the time we might be ready to use it, then things will have been updated. So that's the kind of thing that is done. If not here, then we might try it in other jurisdictions, and then we can bring it back if and when it works. But that's for down the track. I'll just stick to what I can do, which is to try and encourage the key scientists to do the work, provide the funding and the inspiration, and see how far we can get with that.
Is there a commercial component to it at some point? Or would you need to get so far along that...
Yeah, interesting. So I thought this whole thing would be charitable, and it is a charity. But for example, if we find a solution that works, that potentially could be patented so that it could be sold to other countries to allow them to use it, and then to allow more research to be done in Didimo and the New Zealand problems. So whilst I thought it'd all just be, open source type stuff, depending on how far we get, it might be wise to try and keep some of that patentable in cases of use to help fund the charity, but it's not for any personal gain. It would just be for the benefit of the charity if we got that far.
You just want to fish.
I just want to fish, mate. And return the rivers to how they were before.
Yeah,
rather than just looking at what looks like a sewer, to get back to that crystal clear with fish and birds and the whole biodiversity upped. If I died having achieved that, that would be fantastic.
That would be cool.
Yeah. That's it's not a money goal. That's
No,
an end result
it's an
goal.
impact goal.
Leave the rivers better than when I found
Yeah,
them.
it's-
Well, back to how I found them, because I fished here before it was there, seen it go down. And if
Got
I
it.
can return that, yeah, I'd be a happy man.
Yeah, so you've seen that transition from
Yeah.
pristine to not
Because
built.
I was here for 2 years, to 2001, 2003, then went to Ireland for a few years. It was during that time I was away. I heard about it happening. And so by the time I came back in 2007, it had already, really affected a number of the rivers, and that was heartbreaking.
Yeah. What do you think in terms of money and speed to solving this problem? Like, if you had unlimited funding currently,
Yeah.
obviously that would accelerate the progress, but or is there a diminishing point?
Yeah, so in answer to that question, back of the envelope, I can see the studies we need to do to get to a point where we could say, like, this could work. That's probably 5 years, $5 million. At the moment, we've got $5,000, which is all we need for the first study. And there's some other money pledged to me that I'm not accepting yet, because I think we need to get this first study done to demonstrate capability, capacity, that we're serious, we can do it.
Yeah.
Then we'll know what the next study to do is, and that'll be the time for me to go back out to the public and people who are interested to try and fund it bit by bit, so they can see it's a clear, objective endpoint or milestone along the way, and we achieve them one by one rather than having a whole lot of money and it get wasted. So I'm keen to keep it, compartmentalize and build on previous stuff. But that journey, yeah, it's probably a $5 million. If it works, okay, we might find that there's no viruses in Didimo. We have to do something else and go left or go right.
Right.
But that's the nature of research. You know what's going to happen, but that's the target to go for now. For that to happen, I'd need to have the nail care selling well here, Australia, and in Europe. That's the sort of scale that I need to get to. And I can see that being possible now. There's a path to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I've got to sell a bit more first.
What would be the current constraint? Is it the marketing side? Is it the I guess it is a marketing problem, isn't it?
At the moment it is. I've got enough product to deal for the next like 6 months, even if sales go up. My main problem is to get it in front of people who would be interested. And then of those, there's a proportion that would try it. We're finding that the people that see it, about 5 to 10% buy it and try it. And that's great, but we're not getting it in front of enough people. But that said, we're only spending $30 a day on Facebook at the moment because we're trying to find out what ads work.
Yeah.
So there's some scope to increase that to try and get it available to more people. But I've only got a limited runway at the moment that marketing has to work to get to a certain return on investment. And if it does, then that's a recipe that we can transplant into Australia and copy and paste kind of. So we're doing all the sort of hard work now of finding out what works and then transplant it elsewhere. But if I do that too soon, then I might just be replicating something that's ineffective. So we've got to make sure we're clearly returning before going any further.
Yeah. What a unique situation you've got here.
Is it unique? There's probably lots of other organizations that are trying to get in front of enough customers.
Oh, not so much the marketing, just the sort of the larger game plan, right?
Right. Yeah, that's pretty
and
clear.
the funding mechanism to solve a really like holistic problem.
And one of the things that I think is our strength is that when we're trying to work out whether it worked or not, we had to come up with a lab model of fingernails. And so we managed to do that from sheep's wool. And the pressure and temperature, we managed to make giant fingernails about that big that you can then cut up into standard little nails and then put them in a tensile testing machine and see how much strength it needs to break them.
Yeah, right.
So once you've got that model, you can actually see what works. So we've got now published lab data to show that it works. That was really important to me, though not many people look at it, but it does support the foundations of that we're a brand that's involved with stuff that actually works rather than just the marketing side of it.
Yeah, okay.
That's unique. No one's ever done that.
It's very unique. Yeah, sorry.
I care more about it than many, but that's me coming from a science background. But that allows me to have the confidence to get behind it, to speak to people. This stuff does work. And then it's shown to be the case in consumer studies, but those consumer studies are never as objective as, a nice standardized lab control situation.
Have you ever considered a licensing approach or a partnership approach?
Yeah. So I've been involved with an IT company and others being on boards where you've got different opinions on the board, which is often very helpful. But I want to have the financial freedom that when it comes to getting some scale, to be able to donate it all to Dynamo. Whereas if there's other people involved, they might say, well, actually, we want a return on this rather than over there. So I want to keep the ownership the same, but I think that the partnership or licensing might be really helpful in a different geographical location. Like there might be an organization that says, right, with your product, we've got access to all this marketing, all these channels, blah, 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 blah. How about we team up and then share profits from that? That could work really well to reach countries where I don't have any presence or any knowledge of. So I'm definitely open for that, but I want to make sure that the ownership stays the same so it can go to where I want to if it's successful.
That makes sense. Yeah. I was just thinking if arguably the hardest part's been done from the research and development part.
That's what I thought,
But
now it's a real headache.
I know, I guess it's all hard. Right?
Yeah.
But if you've done the bit that you've done a lot of the hard work.
Yeah.
And so if you could use scale and someone else's resourcing to create a win-win dynamic.
I'd be very open to that.
Yeah.
I think if we can demonstrate that we can get it selling well here in Australia, then that's a much more attractive model for someone else, because here's the blueprint, these are the ads, this is the way to do it. And if they've got additional expertise or other channels or other groups they can get in front of people, then that's probably going to speed things up. Then I'd have to work about how to make enough of it quickly enough.
But again, the problems don't end, they just change.
We've got a contract manufacturer in Auckland, and if we had the nice problem of having too much orders, then I'll give them a call and we can see whether they can do it, or whether it might be sensible to set up other manufacturing places in different regions. But yeah, that's one of the many problems we need to solve, which will be satisfying when we get there.
Bit of a Shark Tank / Dragon's Den type situation.
It is a bit, but I'm not looking for money from other people. But I'm just looking for the expertise from those that know, because there'll be other businesses I've done this to know how to do that rather than having to reinvent every wheel, as long as it's in keeping with the ethos and the fact that this is eventually going to be a promoted charitable purpose in the end.
Yeah, I guess they are often equity deals, aren't they?
Yeah, please give us money and give equity for it.
I guess a lot of them just get the exposure as well, right?
Yeah, I'm sure that helps. Interestingly, that radio interview was the thing that gave us exposure, and we had 200 orders within about 3 hours.
Cool.
And we've never had anything like that since.
Wow.
And so I think if you could partly educate and get in front of people in a more trusted environment rather than a sell environment, I think that's the goal. But quite how you do that, because not everyone's on Facebook, not everyone reads magazines. So how do you actually get it in front of those people? But it's a work on.
Yeah, I've got a person to talk to that I'll talk to you about after this. But 200 orders, we've got the benchmark, we've got the goal here.
Yeah.
So,
you know how many people listen to that program and how many buy it? This is before they'd seen any of the advertising, they just heard the name. Oh, that sounds good. Boom.
done. Enough. Yeah.
So the market's there. It's only a little niche we're aiming for. It's of all the people in New Zealand, 2.5 million are female. I figured about 500,000 are in the sort of age bracket demographic they're after. We're only after like 1% of that group to buy it at least once a year.
Yeah.
That's about 5,000 a year. That would do nicely if we could replicate that around the world.
Yeah.
Very happy with that.
Back to the research. Do you ever think that there's crossover, like with researching other problems? But, like maybe not so much with Didymo, but like there's probably numerous people around the world trying to solve similar problems, right?
Absolutely. Because when I went to the agri-tech people, I didn't realize all the stuff that they do, including doing things like, in fast food containers that are normally recyclable, biodegradable. If it's just paper, it'll go to mush and your Chinese would melt through. So they can incorporate wool into those things to give it structure.
Wow.
Which then allows it, yes, to be recyclable, or to be biodegradable, but it serves its purpose.
Usable, yeah.
And some of the patented technology for getting wool into those containers was exactly what we used to try and get wool to make a fake fingernail.
Wow.
Well, not fake, a sort of replica one, of which we have some here. So they had the technique already, they just didn't have the application for it.
Right.
So that there is one of our standardized fingernails made from sheep's wool, and you put it in the tensile testing thing, and at a certain point it breaks.
Right.
So you have a control group with like 20 or 30 of these without the treatment, 20 or 30 with, and you can measure the force required and the flexibility. And that's so much easier than trying to pull people's fingernails and things. But that gives you the ability to do all sorts of other things. I'm thinking from that, they've got special types of hydrolyzed keratin that work to strengthen the nails, to stain to stuff that makes hair. So potentially there's ways you might be able to make people's hair healthier and stronger. There's some things that also cross over into skincare and that sort of stuff. So they've got lots of this New Zealand Inc. biotechnology that's looking for avenues where it could be worked. And if there's myself and others who've got a problem to be solved, then I think that's a nice sort of circle that, it's coming from sheep, it's coming from the natural world, and we're coming up with a product that works from it. That feels good. I like that.
That's cool.
In fact, I'm going to speak to the same guy next week, so I've got 2 or 3 other ideas I want to run by him. So it's a helpful relationship.
Yeah, no doubt. It's funny how the sheep thing. I listened to something recently where I think at the peak there was 70 million sheep in New Zealand. And so it's funny how there's been progress with different use cases for those sheep.
That's right. And I don't think I'm going to make much difference to the sheep market because, things like carpets, I think the volume of that compared to a little bottle of nail care. So it's not the same bulk situation, but the idea of using it for multiple different channels of high-tech, biotech, I think that's good for ourselves, it's good for them, and it's good for New Zealand's sort of reputation in general for taking these from the natural world into natural but effective products. That's cool. Right into that.
Is there anyone still working or currently working on the Didymo problem globally?
I don't think so. The main person that got a relevant scholarship to actually look at the genome of Didymo, it's called Alexis, and she's working in Melbourne. She's agreed to be helping us in our project, but she's currently doing work on Antarctica and all the samples she's got from there. So she's kind of moved on from that, other priorities. So it's the kind of thing that would fall off the radar unless there was someone like Muggins me saying, okay, no, actually we've got some funding and a plan, what can we do?
Right.
And then you can draw on that expertise. But as far as I'm aware, nothing. There's a similar sort of problem in some of the lakes, like in Lake Wanaka, called lake snow, which is another type of algal problem that is in still water rather than running water. I think that's more on the radar of a new problematic species than Didymo is, probably because it's newer. And there may well be crossover. So if we can control Didymo with one technique, you might be able to do the same. We're using different sequencing of RNA for the lake snow. So there's crossover, but I think Didymo's a sort of... And as I was talking to the Auckland Angling Club recently, and one of the audience said, given all the social problems in New Zealand, how can you justify the government putting work on Didymo? And I say, well, actually, you probably can't.
No.
There's much more pressing things, the cost of living, that sort of stuff, which is why other people have to come out themselves if that's going to be the thing they're looking for. So I'm not expecting the government to do it. I would like them to be involved down the track with MPI if it's ever getting into trials. But I think if I can give them a solution on the plate, then it's for them and society to decide whether they want to use it or not. But yeah, I agree there's other social priorities right now.
But I think even comments like that don't really help anyone either, right? Like the mindset of, yeah, like, yes, of course there's other issues, but I'm trying to do something that's still got positive good here.
That's right. I think it's helpful to hear all the negative questions and comments because they're going to be shared by other people. So you have to have a good, solid evidence-based rebuttal for that that's convincing. But if you're just trying to look for problems, that's a really easy thing to do. It's it's a cognitive shortcut. Oh, that's too hard.
Yeah.
But I have to be able to withstand that. Sometimes it's a bit tricky if you're the only one having to come up with all those positive things to counteract. But yeah, easy to see the risks and the flaws and the problems, and they can get a bit overwhelming. But I think we need to identify them and just solve them one by one step at a time, and see if we can get to the end result.
I like it. Is there a, back to the research thing, is there a central resource globally for people to submit what they're working on from a research standpoint?
Well, now you can search up Dynamo and look for all the scientific papers on it. And that's what I did actually to try and work out what might work. So it's not one repository, but now it's so much more available now in the digital age. And most of those scientists have their email address. And so I was able to contact the top sort of 4 or 5 people who I thought were going to be really helpful. And all of them have said, that sounds interesting. The lady that did the myrtle rust thing said, oh, I've never heard of that, but I think it could work. That sort of open-minded, oh, here's the technology, here's a new problem for it. And so they've been really gracious about offering their expertise. And often in these situations, the initial stuff they kind of do for free to see if you get some proof of concept, and then you try and get some grant money.
Yeah.
There's a Professor Gemma Gagan in Dunedin who's going to do some of the sequencing to look for viruses. She's fantastic. She's got all the capability, and she's like, yep, we can do that. Jesus, these people exist.
Yeah,
you can just join them together with some sort of thread to inspire. They've been really, really helpful, particularly for someone who knows nothing about the demo, really. They've been very open-minded to listen, so I'm very grateful for that.
What role do you think AI will play in the solving of this problem?
I hadn't thought of that. In drug delivery, there's lots of excitement about the idea of instead of having to experiment and generate new molecules for new drugs, you could use AI to actually do some of that chemical engineering itself and then say, oh, this is a molecule that might work, rather than the current situation. You make lots of molecules and then you try it and see. So it might well cut down a lot of the experimental stuff. The technology that I think is going to be most relevant is now, if you're trying to make a complementary chain of RNA, you can do that. Just type in the chain on the computer and it will make it. Some of that technology has been used in vaccines. So it's a different purpose, but the idea of being able to come up with a strand of RNA is now very doable. But before that would take a whole lot of work and expense. So technology can certainly get us there quicker. As for AI, I don't know. I should ask it. Dear AI, what can you do to help with this?
Can you solve this?
That's right. Dear Claude.
Oh yeah, just do this. I mean, we joke, but it's becoming.
I might get to that.
Valuable and powerful. Yeah. So
I don't think any of us can conceive of what's actually coming.
No, I don't believe so either.
In some ways, it's a little bit sort of head blowing. So again, I'm taking the approach of one step at a time. If I've got a little problem, you might ask ChatGPT or Claude to help with that particular problem. But there's people younger and brighter than me that will be able to use it much better and more efficiently than I can.
This is a really take this question
right.
How you will, right?
I prepare myself.
Why is it so hard to cure cancer?
Any particular cancer you're thinking of, or
just generally, just like as a layman, right? There's so much money in the world and talent and skill and like brain power, but
yep. Okay, so if we say cancer, there's one aligned similar mechanism going on. So cells need to replicate to replace themselves. So if you cut yourself, you need to be able to stop the blood clot, and then you need to repair what's there. So your skin cells need to multiply with the right stimulus. Then they need to know when to stop. So otherwise you get this great big thing growing on your hand that will never stop. So there needs to be signals to make it grow and lots of signals to make it stop. There are thousands of things involved in that. And what happens with cancer generally is that the signals to make it stop have fallen off, so it keeps growing, or the signals to make it start growing have generated, and that's because of genetic mutation. So you replicate a cell, it makes a mistake, and maybe your stop switch is broken or your on switch has flicked to being on. And there are so many things involved in that it's hard to find one target for all cancers. The cancers that exist manage to evade the immune system, because each day you'll be making probably millions of cancer cells, but your immune system recognizes it as being foreign, not normal, wipes it out. Thank you very much, immune system. But the ones that escape that, just by chance, the immune system doesn't recognize them. So they've escaped immune control, and they've got this biological mechanism which is now freewheeling down a hill, whereas before it knew when to put the brakes on. There's so much molecular switches involved in that are different for lots of different cancers, that's very hard. And if you do find the right switch and you put the brakes on, that's great, but you're still on a slope and you've still got power against the brakes, and sooner or later the brake's going to wear out and some other mechanism is going to work and it'll carry on doing it. So a bit like with antibiotics, you find a good target initially, then it'll escape that, and then you'll find another one. So you're forever having this battle between the cancer cell that's out of control versus what tools you've got to try and counteract it. With chemotherapy and radiotherapy, that's often very indiscriminate. It's just basically saying, I'm going to kill as much as I can, and I'm hoping the healthy cells will be able to regenerate better than the weakened, dodgy ones.
Right.
So that's a bit like your pesticide, you're just spraying stuff on. Now there are drugs that are molecularly targeted, so you can go for a particular switch that's been turned on, or a particular molecule that's been made that's causing trouble. So now in the realm of molecularly targeted drugs, but they're massively expensive, there's lots of them. It'll forever be an evolutionary war between what the cell does, what mistakes it makes, and what we come up with to try and counteract it.
So do you think we'll get to the point where, I guess what you're saying is that they're all very unique, but do you think we'll get to a point where it is?
I think we'll get to a point in the future where if you had unlimited wealth and you had cancer, the chances are you'd get that cancer molecularly screened, get the genome of it, know all the targets, and have about 5 or 6 drugs you could try and turn to control it.
Right.
And now more people live having had cancer than haven't. So there's a lot of people cured of at least one cancer. But there are certain cells which just acquire age-related problems as they go. So even if you could cure yourself of all these cancers, you've still got your age-related dementia-type programs, the sort of gradual degeneration that happens as we get older. So if you wanted to live a healthy life, you'd have to have things that also not just deal with cancer, but deal with the general aging to make yourself stay healthy for longer. That brings a whole new question about whether that's an ethical thing to do. At the moment, when we have people living longer, they don't live a longer healthy life, they just live a longer disabled life. If you want someone carrying on and want to live, you get Elon Musk that want to live forever. Do you want Elon Musk living forever is one question. Should you be making way for the next generation and popping off this mortal coil in your due time? Because the world couldn't cope if we kept on living forever. So there's ethical and moral questions. But back to your question, cancer, yes, there'll be less and less of those things that we can't control, but you then end up dying of age-related problems like your kidney failure, your heart failure, your brain failure type things that currently cancer stops you from dying of these things. But if you get rid of cancer, these other things are going to get you. So you'd have to have a dual approach to deal with aging as well as cancer. That'd be quite tricky.
It's an interesting one though, isn't it? The health span versus lifespan. And
absolutely. Yeah. We see it all the time. The admissions in hospital, in the department I work in, which is general medicine, it's often dealing with elderly, frail people. They've got lots of different problems, and one little thing's knocking them over the edge, like a fall or a small stroke or something like that. And then you're left with disability where they lose their independence, they can't stay in their home anymore, they're in various degrees of care, and for many their quality of life deteriorates quite a lot. But then you see those people that are fit and elderly, and that's great, but most of them, a lot of them are quite miserable because all their friends have died,
right,
and their children have died. They've outlived their interactive time. They're generationally isolated.
Right.
They can't see very well, they can't hear very well, and all the people that they love or care for have gone. So if that's your ideal of happiness, it's tricky. Now, if everyone was living to 90 and healthily, then that's different because you've still got those important relationships. But it's the more you see it, it's really good if you just have a healthy life and then a quick demise.
Definitely. But I think that's another thing that a lot of people don't think about, though. I think there's that idea that death's this far disappointing. And
Yeah, we don't think about mortality because it's often too uncomfortable. And if mortality happens, like in a family, someone dies at home, our society is kept away from that. You hardly see it. It's alien, it's hidden, it's in behind the door type stuff. So we see it a lot in the hospital, and that, I guess, normalizes a wee bit more for us. There's other cultures that deal with it better than ours, I think. Ours is like behind closed doors a lot.
right.
But yeah, it's coming, which brings us back to before. You feel, you know, your graph of how many weeks you got left, it's definitely coming, but you can see that as a positive of, okay, well, how can I live as well as possible in what time remains, not waste time, be kind to people, focus on relationships and things that are important,
Absolutely.
rather than leaving it too long before you think, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should have done that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the holistic reasons for the podcast, is to hopefully get people thinking a bit differently, or to inspire people to take action. You know, if there's someone listening that has been thinking about doing a business, or thinking about changing jobs, or some kind of structural change that for whatever reason they're not doing them.
Yeah. There's always barriers for taking those leaps, and some of them are very valid. You know, it could be financially super stressful. If you can be in a position where it's not a huge big leap and not too much depends on it, then that's great. I had a friend who said, oh, if you've ever thought about doing something, just do it. And I would disagree entirely with that. If you think about doing something, okay, put it in the pot of things that you might think about doing, and then investigate them through some sort of rational criteria. My fantastic wife is one of those rational criteria, because she makes sure that there's some sense to it, and I stay with the idea for long enough, and it's sort of backed up, because some of our initial ideas are terrible. But if you get to a point that there's something that interests you, and you can identify the reasons why not, but you can then mitigate them or solve them, then why not? And give it a go if you can. I realize it's a luxury when you can afford to do that. But maybe there's ways where there's a time of your life where, you know, a partner's earning, so the other one can afford to do something a little bit more risky, or there's often solutions to these things. But I also recognize there's times when there's not, and it's just, you just got to pay the bills, you got to get through, look after your kids, keep the house safe and warm. And in that situation, you know, that's not the right time. But if you find yourself with the time or possibility, then if someone has listened to this and goes off and does it and makes a success of it, then that would be time well spent.
Totally. Yeah. I think it's a continuum, isn't it? There's the reckless and impulsive person down one end, and then the safe, cautious, slow moving down the other end. And
that's right. And sometimes it works, and sometimes this reckless person gets onto something that works really well, and that's great. But more often than not, those people have had lots of failures, and if they manage to go again, great. Sometimes they do really well, but there's quite a few that are reckless, and then they're not succeeded. And yeah, I think you need a sort of spectrum of those things, don't you?
I think so. Yeah.
Play to the strengths of those two sides, not be too negative, not be too impulsive, and try and come up with a reasonably logical plan, knowing that you can't predict the future, but you can have a reasonable idea what's likely and plan for better or worse and give it a go.
I think that's what leads to a lot of inaction, is the fact that there is so many dichotomies in life, right? There's the be conservative, think about the future down one end, and then there's the reckless, take action. And, you know, if some people are just like, which one is it?
And I think some of that is inherent, it's their nature, but I think some of it's nurture driven as well. So it depends on your echo chamber or your social group. In the hospital, doctors tend to have decided on a career when they're 18, and they pretty much stay on that track and never look left, up, or right, or down, because that's their pathway. And they're surrounded by people doing the same thing, so it'd be quite weird to do anything outside of that. But there is the potential to nudge yourself more that way or more that way if that's what's needed. But I think it's influenced by the parental voices you have, don't do that, or you can do anything, or maybe a spouse will, don't do that, or you can do anything. I think there's these subliminal messages that combine to put you somewhere on that spectrum.
I think you're right. Yeah.
But I don't think it's absolutely concrete. I think there's some reasonable plasticity in there. And even if there's not that much plasticity, if you can find out where you are, then you can work on your strengths and find people or things to try and plug the gaps. So you've got a balanced overall approach.
Totally. Yeah. Do you find that some people are more easily influenced by the people around them? They're more spongy than others?
I haven't really thought about that.
I think about that a lot.
Okay, tell me.
Because I feel that I'm quite spongy, meaning like I'm around a whole bunch of people that are ultra positive, happy, ambitious, risk tolerant. I'm way more likely to be like that.
I think that's part of human nature, regressing to that mean. One example for me was when I was here in New Zealand in 2001 to 2003, I was fishing, I was active, I was running, even played rugby for a bit, all sorts of things, because everyone else was doing that. I went to Ireland, and what people do is they drink beer in the pub and they watch football. So I drank beer in the pub and watched football. So I think that social norm that's around about you subliminally does shift you. And I guess in certain groups as well, if you congregate in a group that are really risk averse or risk tolerant, that will shift you.
Yeah.
But I do think you need to have some objective things you compare with, be it a spouse or someone that you trust that you can bounce ideas off before you go off and do something stupid, which my wife has saved me from many times.
That's helpful, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like that theory that you become the 5 people that you hang around with, or the average of the 5 people you hang around with the most. I think about that a bit.
I think it's also unfair if you rely on one person to be your barometer.
I think so too.
Because if they're the one that's job is to say no,
Yes.
then and your job is to say yes, then that can cause friction and you can end up being a bit despondent from that. So I don't think it's fair to require one person to be the bread. You have to take some responsibility yourself and share it amongst others, get different opinions to try and work out where the likely middle ground is. I find that I'm surrounded by people generally who are more risk averse than I am, and that can get a little bit disappointing. And I think I get the impression from them a bit of a tall poppy type thing as well. Oh, you're off doing silly things and blah, blah, blah. Oh, that's not what we do. We do this. So there's a bit of disdain for that, because if that's successful or brings happiness, then in some ways it's a judgment upon them for not doing that sort of stuff. So there's a few interesting things in there.
That is interesting.
One of my previous bosses in Scotland, I'll never forget this. So I was in Glasgow doing academic type medicine stuff, and I wasn't seeing my wife enough because she'd finished studying and I was doing all these horrible hours. And she said, right, we've got to go somewhere else for a year or two, just get a bit of a headspace. So, okay, fine. So I went to my boss and said, thinking of going to New Zealand or Australia. And he said, oh, that'd be a disaster. Disaster. I said, oh, why is that? I said, oh, there's a previous guy a couple of years ago, Danny, whoever, great guy, lots of potential like you. He went to Australia. And as far as I know, he's still surfing. What a disaster.
Oh, horrible.
We're thinking, maybe we're not quite on the same wavelength here.
Exactly.
But there's not many people that do that deviant thing of leaving or taking a risk. So there's probably a bit of that in me anyway, but it had to be, my wife had to make me do it because I was too busy going down that track. And if you're surrounded by people who don't go to Australia or whatever because they're just doing their research and that sort of stuff, that becomes the norm that you regress to. And so you just carry on down that path. I'm glad I didn't.
Are you from Scotland?
Born in Wales, but moved to Scotland when I was 11. And then studied there and then back and forth a couple of times.
Did you ever question your decision when you're through like medical school? Were you like, oh man, I don't know if I want to, I'm pretty deep into this.
Yeah, because once you've gone a certain amount of time into that, then there's embarrassment or shame if you do something else, but there's also a guaranteed income and it's safe and that sort of stuff. So once I was in it, I got so far into it at a time when every third night you'd have to work 34 hours, start one day, work all night, work all the next day, 2 days to rest, same again, and you're doing exams and stuff as well. You're nowhere near a headspace to think about where your life's going. You're just trying to survive till the next time you get a chance to go for a piss, or next meal is just right in front of you. And so that, on reflection, makes me think that you need to have some decent headspace for making those life decisions. And if you're head down, bums up, you're just surviving. I think there's a lot of people who are in that situation, they're just surviving. There's a lot of untapped potential that could be released, but yeah, the environment you're in is tricky. So I don't regret having done it. It's been a great job. It's been a privilege to do it and to share in important times of other people's lives, hopefully be useful and empathetic in that time. But I did find I wasn't giving quite enough when it was getting more normal and my learning had flattened off. So I think it was wise then to think about doing sideways or other steps to keep myself refreshed so I could give my maximum to my hospital work, but also these other avenues to explore stuff and learn some things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I met my wife at medical school as well. So
did you?
There you go.
She's a doctor too.
Yep, she's a GP.
Yep.
First time I met her, she thought I was an idiot. Wise woman.
Why?
I'm not sure if I can share it, but I saw her in the bar and thought, oh, she's lovely. And I went out to chat to her and said, oh, what's your name? And she said, Sorker. I said, oh, that's an unusual name. And she perceived that as me being a bit arrogant and scoffing at the name. So she just wandered off and that was that. It took us 2 years before we finally got together because my flatmate who knew me from school was on the same dissection table where you're in a group of 6 and you're cutting open bodies. So she was able to sort of be the go-between between her and I to convince her that I wasn't quite so much of a tosser as she thought I was. Not quite so much.
Sorker.
Yeah.
That is an interesting name.
Yep. She's so the Gaelic is a Soca Réaltaniscile, which means bright little star in Irish. She's certainly that.
Wow. Interesting.
She's a polyglot. She learns lots of languages.
How many?
She's up to 5 now. She's learning Italian now. And golf, she's right into that as well. So we have our different things that we're keen on. But no, she's great.
That's so interesting. Languages and golf.
The golf's more recent. Language has been how long. She went to Germany to do summer jobs and things. There's Irish, and now Spanish is the latest one, and now Italian.
They're all from similar families, aren't they, those languages?
I think as far as I know, the Irish Gaelic is quite different. Oh, she speaks German as well, and the structure is a bit different. But to be honest,
Do you speak other languages?
No, I'm woeful at it.
No.
Really. And interestingly, it doesn't really grab it really excites her. So she's got an evening of studying a language, she's pumped up. If I've got an evening doing something to do with a project or a Dynamo or something like that, then I'm pumped up. So you're aware of what your strengths are. And I think it would kill us both if we had to swap.
Probably. Yeah. Wow. We got to wrap it up. This could be a round 2. This could be an annual one, actually. So, like,
we can plot my demise. That'd be a good contrast to the other success people.
You're going to keep on going. One thing that I've done over the years is have guests back for an anniversary edition.
Okay.
Not chronologically exact, but just in the future, right? Just to catch up and, review any predictions that were made. Okay. So, you will have cured the Dynamo problem. You might have taken up golf and speak some languages. Who knows what you'll be up to, but...
Do you want me to state them now so we can hold myself accountable?
Absolutely. A bit of accountability. That's one of my favorite things.
Okay. So I think my main priority is the nail thing. And in a year's time, I would like us to be established here and Australia and have a footprint in the UK or Ireland.
Okay.
Yeah. And as a metric, 100 sales a day. Last month we were on 4.
Okay.
This month we're on 8.
Okay.
If I get to 100, then that would be solid.
It's a good number to
and
get
that
to.
I could start siphoning some money away to Dynamo.
Yeah.
That's number 1.
Okay.
Number 2, having completed the first study of the Dynamo, one of like 10, but I've got something out there ready to be published, completed. Third thing, get less than £5 a round of golf, just once.
What are you doing now, roughly?
13.
Okay.
But anyway, it means I spend more time with my wife, so that's good. So that's a win-win.
Yeah.
And I would probably by a year's time have got a bit more clarity on what roles to be continuing from the medical side, because I think I've got a finite lifespan of how much I can give to that before I get too exhausted. So either still doing the same and motivated, or having shifted slightly to allow it to have a little bit of longevity.
Amazing.
Well, we'll see. Could be a disaster on all fronts.
It could be. We'll find out, though.
Yes. Okay. I look forward to being held accountable. And if there's any things that go badly wrong, there's bound to be some learnings from that.
Absolutely.
A black swan or 2.
Oh, so good. Very enjoyable episode. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for yours, David.
This year.
Many thanks. Mistakes in that.
I'm at peace.